Hi everyone, and thank you for joining October 2021's Stampin' Class by Mail. I'm Jeanna Wieselmann of MySweetPaper.com, and I can't wait for you to make your beautiful cards using the Pretty Pumpkins bundle by Stampin' Up. I've teamed up with Brenda Cardinal, another Stampin' Up demonstrator, to offer these classes by mail each month. This month, it's Brenda's turn to show you how to stamp and assemble your cards, and next month, it'll be my turn. Make sure to watch to the end of this video for a sneak peek of the card designs I put together for next month. Have fun making your cards, and here's Brenda.
Thanks, Gina. Hi everyone, I'm Brenda Cardinal of stampintulip.stampinup.net, and I'm excited to show you how to stamp and assemble your 3 card designs featuring the Pretty Pumpkins bundle by Stampin' Up. This bundle can be found in Stampin' Up's July to December 2021 mini catalog. We're pairing this bundle with elements from the Blackberry Beauty Suite, also from the mini catalog. From this suite, we'll be using the Blackberry Beauty Designer Series paper, the gold shimmer vellum, and the gold 3/8" shimmer ribbon. Also from the mini catalog, we'll be using the new cork paper. To add a little bling to a couple of our cards, we'll be using genial gems and some sequins from the Sequins for Everything pack. And lastly, from the annual catalog, we'll be using the gold foil paper. We'll be using some elements that have been punched and die cut for you if you ordered a class kit from either Gina or me. These elements include things from the banners Pick-a-Punch, the detailed pumpkins, scalloped contour, and stitched rectangle dies. This class also features a coloring technique using blender pens. A blender pen has been included in your class kit if you haven't already received one in a prior kit. Before we get started, you also want to get your supply items ready, including the cinnamon cider, mossy meadow, and rich raspberry ink pads. Your adhesives include mini glue dots, mini Stampin' Dimensionals, Stampin' Seal, and multi-purpose liquid glue. You also want to have a bone folder, an assortment of clear blocks, paper snips, and a Stamparatus if you have one. Please reach out to Gina or I if you need some supplies, would like to chat about becoming a Stampin' Up demonstrator, or hosting a Stampin' Up event. Let's get started with our first card design. Our first card is our framed pumpkin card. If you ordered a Stampin' Class by Mail kit from either Gina or me, all your parts and pieces, including those that have been die cut or punched, were shipped directly to your home. If not, here are the things you'll need to complete the cards as designed. Pause the video here to prep everything you need, and then come back when you're ready. We'll start by doing our stamping, and we'll stamp our inside greeting first. So for placement for our greeting, we are going to, let me show you what it looks like. Well, this nice little decorative strip on the left side of our greeting. So for placement of stamping our greeting, we'll place our cinnamon cider strip about 1/8 inch from the score line. Then, using our rich raspberry pad, we'll stamp our greeting. And really, you can stamp whatever greeting you'd like. And the idea here is to center the greeting between your strip of cinnamon cider cardstock and the right edge of your card base. All right. Then we'll set that aside. And then we'll stamp the strip here with our leaves in kind of an effect, creating our own designer series paper. I'm going to bring a piece of scratch paper in so that I can keep my work surface paper clean for my presentation here. So we'll ink up our leaf stamp, and we'll just stamp it randomly on our strip of rich raspberry cardstock. I think I'll do just, whoops, I think I'll do one little, yeah, there we go. All right, and then if you wanted to, you could also stamp that leaf on your envelope as well. Okay, so that's all of our stamping, and now it's all about assembling. So we'll start by folding our thick, very vanilla card base in half, and we'll use our bone folder here to make sure we get a nice, crisp crease on that. And then we'll attach our stamped rich raspberry strip onto our cinnamon cider strip, and we'll use our Stampin' Seal to do that. And we'll center this retractable strip so we have equal borders on the left and right side of that strip. And then we'll add this to the inside of our card. And now I'm going to, before I put any pressure on this, I'm going to double check my open space on either side of the greeting, so I can, if I didn't get my greeting stamped exactly where I wanted to, now I can kind of correct that by putting my strip such that I have that same space on either side. Okay, there we go. And yeah, I have a little extra hanging off the edge there. Whenever possible, I like to cut that a little long so that it doesn't end up looking short. Okay, there we go. Now I'll set this aside, and we're going to attach our designer series paper to our frame. To do that, we'll use our multi-purpose liquid glue, and I'm going to place the glue so that it's between the stitched lines. All right, and I'll set that aside for a minute. And then we're using the same multi-purpose liquid glue, we'll attach our gold foil to the back of our pumpkin. And when we place the foil, we're going to place it so that we just have the corners of the foil exposed, so we kind of minimize the trimming that we'll need to do. So I will put my glue on the pumpkin sections here. Okay, and then I'll come back with my paper snips and trim off those corners. Now, a little trick when you're trimming like this, if you put your scissors at an angle, you can kind of cut just under where the pumpkin is, so none of your gold foil will show along the edges. And if a little bit does, just come back and trim that off. Okay. Next, we'll add our ribbon to our pumpkin. And to do this, we're going to take our Stampin' Seal and just put a tiny, tiny amount in the center of our ribbon. And then we'll fold it so that it creates a V. And then we'll come back with our paper snips and we'll cut from the outside edge towards the center here to create another V. Using mini glue dots, we'll attach the ribbon to our pumpkin. And it's a little hard to pick up a glue dot with ribbon, so put the ribbon on the glue dot and put some nice pressure on it, and just be careful when you lift it off. And we'll tuck this to the right of our stem. You know what, this tail seems a little long. I'm going to come back with my paper snips and trim that just a little bit more. Yeah, I like that better. Okay, and then we'll add our leaf with the mini glue dot as well. And then we're going to place our leaf so this notch in the leaf kind of tucks around the stem like that. Okay. And now all we have to do is add our details to the front of our card. We'll do that by using Stampin' Dimensionals. And I think I'll use 6 on this one because it's kind of big. I'm going to tuck the middle ones in just a little bit to get some support in the middle. And pull those release papers. And then decide, how you want your designer series paper to look. I think I'll put mine this way so that this nice, well, let's see. No, I'm going to put it this way. So this nice big spray of oak leaves and acorns is not covered up by the pumpkin. Okay, we'll center that, and then we'll add our pumpkin detail. And we're going to do that using dimensionals as well, but we want to make sure, since the pumpkin's going to hang off our frame, that we don't put any dimensionals on the ribbon side of our pumpkin. So I'll flip it over, and I think I'll put one up here so it also bridges the pumpkin and the leaf a little bit more secure. And one down here, and then I'll put one here so a little bit of the dimensionals on the ribbon, and that'll help secure the ribbon as well. Okay, and when I place my pumpkin, I'm going to place it so it hangs off the edge of my frame, and I place it just a little bit below the center line, or wherever you think it looks nice. And there we go, our first card design. Our next card is our pumpkin fun fold card. Here are the parts and pieces you'll need for this card. Before I show you how to stamp and assemble your cards, I'm going to show you how I cut this angle on our card base and how I achieved cutting this shape for each of our designer series paper. So we'll start out by taking our 8.5 by 5.5 Very Vanilla card base, and we scored it at 2 1/8 and 4 1/4. Then I'll bring in my paper trimmer, and I'm going to open the arm here, and I'm going to lay my card base so that this corner is at 2 3/4. And my score lines are here. So the 2 1/8 one's here and the 4 1/4 is here. Then I'll take a pencil and I'll make a little mark here in this that lines with this groove, because I know this is a 0 point because that's where my blade runs. Then I'll take and I'll spin my card base so that the mark I just made with a pencil is again in that groove, and then my 4 1/4 inch score line is on the opposite side here. Okay. Now, if you're not comfortable doing it this way, you certainly can just take a ruler, draw a line, and cut it with a scissors. Okay. So that's where that angle came from. All right, so then we can set this aside. And then to get the right angle for the designer series paper, what I did was I cut designer series paper the width that I wanted. In this case, it's 1 7/8. Okay. Then, after I did that, I actually took another color of just cardstock because I wanted to create a template. So what I did was I created a template by laying my strip, and imagine this is longer, and I lined it up here like this. I flipped it over, drew a line, cut it, and then cut 1/8 of an inch off. And that's how I got my template. And then I labeled it so I knew which designer series paper worked, this template worked with, okay? And then I did the same thing here. So all I needed to do, I'm gonna bring my card back in so we can look at it. So I want to take my designer series paper. This is a little directional. And so I will line my template up like this. Then I'll take my paper snips and just trim it like that. Okay, so that's my designer series paper for this section. Again, I'll check my direction of my paper. I want the birds going that way, and my angle goes like this on my template. Line that all up and cut that. So then I have this one. Now for this other one, notice I did not layer these two pieces up because the angle is actually going the other direction. Okay, so what I did with this template is I flipped it over and I wrote, this is how the diamond designer series paper is cut. So the angle goes this way. All right, and then I'll trim that off. And there we go. And then if you really like everything to be super precise, you can lay it in here and make sure, yep, the angle works. I don't need to adjust it in any way. All right, so that's how I cut the card base and the designer series paper. So we're going to set this aside because we don't need this till the end. All right, so then we're going to do our stamping and coloring of our pumpkins. So we'll take our very vanilla piece here, and again, our rich raspberry ink. And we'll stamp our greeting in the upper right-hand corner. I'm going to tuck it kind of close. And then we'll stamp our pumpkin trio. Kind of close to the edges of the cardstock. And I'm going to shift it just a little bit so my tall pumpkin is going vertical. There we go. All right. And then if you'd like, you can also stamp your envelope and color your envelope as well. Now, oftentimes when we do a watering color technique, we actually stamp our the image that we're going to color in black and then let that dry, and then the colors are nice and crisp. In this case, I decided to stick with the rich raspberry, and even though you can see on the leaves here that some of the rich raspberry kind of pulls in on the green, I thought that looked kind of cool. It kind of just pulled it all together. So rich raspberry is what we're stamping our pumpkins in. Okay, now we need to create a color palette to color with our blender pen. And we're going to do that by taking our rich raspberry ink and our C block, and we're going to press it right into the pad like that. And then we'll take our cinnamon cider stamp pad, and we're going to just ink up one corner. We don't need much because we are going to just color the stems. And then we'll take our mossy meadow stamp pad and we'll ink the last corner. Okay, so now we have our color palette to color with. And you want to have a piece of scratch paper handy. And working with blender pens is kind of cool. Now mine's a little bit, you can see that the ends are all full of color. And before I get started, I'm just going to scribble to make sure all that color has scribbled itself out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to pick up a little color, start with rich raspberry, rub a little bit of it off, and then I'm just going to start coloring. And I'm going to, I think for the pumpkins, I'm going to highlight all the pumpkin spines there. Not spines, what are they called? The ridges in the pumpkin. And then I'm going to come back and fill in the rest of my pumpkin. Okay, come back, grab a little bit more ink, scribble a little bit of it off, and you just keep repeating this process until you have your pumpkins colored the way you want them to look. Now I will caution you with blender pens, you don't want to rub over the same area too often, okay, because the paper will start to roll and peel then. But once you let it dry, you can come back and add some more color if you want to. And you can play with how you want your coloring strokes to go. If you want to do nice long strokes like that, or some shorter ones, you know, it'll all look good. And it's a little dicey when you first get started because you're like, oh, I don't know if I like the way that looks. But once it dries and you step away from it, or you get the whole card put together, you won't notice little individual things. And it's supposed to kind of give you the watercolor effect. So having some light spots and dark spots is awesome, actually. Okay. Now we'll go to our stems. So when we're switch colors, we're going to scribble the tip of our blender pen until it is back to clear ink. And then we'll come back and pick up a little of our cinnamon cider, color the stems. Then we'll scribble that out. And then we'll go to our mossy meadow and do our leaves. Now, like I said, this is a spot where it felt like some of the rich raspberry ink that we stamped our image with will kind of bleed through and so forth. And I think that's fine because I think it then makes the leaves have some more depth and dimension and kind of another little color. And I'm just going to go over my vine here. I just noticed I missed a little bit of that pumpkin on the right here. So a little color there. Okay, I like the way that looks. Now I'll scribble this back out so it goes to clear again. And then I know it's ready for the next time I'm going to color with my blender pen. All right. And now it's all about assembly. So let's bring our card base back in. And what we're going to do is we're going to fold our card base along the 4 1/4 inch score line, and we'll crease that with our bone folder. And then we'll take the top flap of our card and we'll fold it back towards the 4 1/4 score line and put a crease on that. So there's our fun fold. All right, we're going to add our designer series paper next, so our pumpkins can dry a little bit. So I'm going to open my card back up so we know where we're going here. So let's start by putting our smaller piece of designer series paper here, and whatever you'd like to use. Certainly multi-purpose liquid glue would work, because then you can get in the very corners, or Stampin' Seal, whatever you're more comfortable with. Sometimes the liquid glue is a little easier to use because you can slide this around a little bit. But also, if you don't put a lot of pressure on this before you make sure it's lined up the way you want, you're okay there too. Okay, and now our gold foil, rich raspberry designer series paper. And I'm going to put a little in that diagonal cut there. Okay. I'm kind of looking down here to make sure my designer series paper is at in the same spot there. We have kind of that straight line across there. It looks like this one should come down just a little bit more. Okay, and then our last piece goes here when the card is folded. So let's get this adhesive on this one. Okay, there we go. All right, and then we'll take our Very Vanilla that we stamped on, say our Very Vanilla piece that we stamped on, and we'll layer that with onto our rich raspberry piece. And then we'll add that to the inside of our card. And we'll place this so it's centered. Okay, and the last thing to do is add our little sequins. Now our sequins come from this pack called Sequins for Everything. And it's pretty cool because you have color groupings of sequins. Okay. Now you can place your sequins wherever you want. This is how I chose to do mine. I also thought it'd be kind of cute to put this sequin inside the O on the word U, you know, kind of wherever you think they look nice. And I'm going to start by putting my liquid glue down. And I'm going to stick with what I did before. What I like about these sequins is there's no holes in these sequins, so it's pretty awesome. If you have a take your pick tool, I'm going to use this to grab the sequins that I want. And then I can place them exactly where I want them to be. What's kind of cool about these sequins as well is in each grouping, there's the round sequins that we're using for our card. Oops. And then there's this shape, and then there's also like a solid little disc one. So pretty fun. Make great shaker cards, right? Because you have all those different shapes in your shaker cards. Now I ended up a little putty there, didn't I? Okay, there we go. And there is our second card. Our last card is our Rich Raspberry Pumpkin Trio card. Here are the parts and pieces you'll need for this card. We'll start by doing our stamping, and we'll stamp our greeting for the outside of our card first using the Rich Raspberry ink. And our banner here was created using the Banner's Pick-a-Punch. Awesome punch. It punches 2 different shapes in 3 different widths, 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, and 1 inch. So it's like getting 6 punches in one. Great value. So I'm going to use the Gather Together image for this card. And then we'll set that aside. And then we'll stamp the pumpkin on the inside of the card, just so there's a little something in there. And you can decide how much of the pumpkin you want on or off the very vanilla cardstock here. Okay. And then you could also stamp that pumpkin on your envelope if you want as well. Now we need to stamp that same image on our die cut Rich Raspberry pumpkin. And you could go ahead and try inking it up and stamping directly onto the pumpkin. Or if you would like perfect placement, the Stamparatus is a fantastic tool for that. So I'm going to clean my stamp quick, and then I can begin. So because we're using a cling stamp that has the foam and the red rubber, our setup here is our plate that holds the stamp. I have my grid paper here, and that's it. All right, and then for easier inking, I'm going to put my stamp case underneath the panel here. So then I'm just going to go ahead and lay my pumpkin down, and then close the panel here and pick up the stamp. And then I'm going to ink up my stamp and stamp it down on my grid paper. So that tells me where my stamp is placed. And I'll lay the relief image around the stamped image. Okay, and then I'll drop my pumpkin into the relief image like that. Let's see. You know what? I'm gonna actually, hang on a minute. I bent this a little bit so it's popping up, and I just want to make sure it turns out exactly right. There we go. That'll be better. Okay, so I'll drop my pumpkin image back in, ink up my stamp one more time, and then close the panel here, put a little pressure on that. And there we go. Now, it looks like I missed this edge a little bit here, so I'm going to come back in and re-ink my stamp and try it one more time. I thought I had enough pressure on this side here. Ah, much better. And that's the beauty of the Stamparatus, right? Perfect placement. So there we go. And that's all for stamping. So now we can start putting our card together. We'll start off by taking our rich raspberry card base and we'll fold it in half along that score line. And we'll use our bone folder. Get a nice crease on that. And we'll add our stamped pumpkin piece to the inside of our card using stamp and seal. Got to get it started. I ran out when I was doing the second card. Oh, there we go. And so I had to put a new replacement cartridge in. Just needed to get it started. All right. So then we'll place this in the center. Okay, and we'll set that aside. And then we'll add our shimmer vellum to our Very Vanilla piece. Now these are almost square, but not quite. They're an eighth of an inch difference. So to add your vellum, to make sure that we don't see the adhesive on the pretty side, the shimmer side, we're going to place the adhesive so it falls behind the pumpkins here. So I'm just going to place just one strip here. And the corners here are loose, and that's okay. It just gives it a little bit more dimension. Oops, didn't get that exactly lined up, did I? Let's try it again. Yeah, that's better. Okay, there we go. And then we'll add this to the front of our card. Now, like I said, this is almost square, but it's 3 5/8 this way and 3 3/4 this way. So when I put this on my card, I'm going to put it so that I have equal borders along the left, top, and right sides. And the reason why we want to make sure we put it this way is because this long, skinny pumpkin, we need to have enough space for it, okay? And we'll add our cork piece. This cork paper is super fantastic. It is punchable, you can die cut it, it's just really cool. You can stamp on it, it's amazing. So I'm going to place our cork so it just covers up the vellum. Okay, so, yep, just a little bit. And then take a look, and if you need to trim off a little bit, just grab your paper snips and trim off any excess. It's a little long on this side too. There we go. All right. Now we'll add our very detailed pumpkin that's die cut. And placement wise, we want to place it so that we have just like an 1/8 of an inch at the top of our pumpkin of the vellum showing. And we're going to put it just slightly off center. Okay. Now, the best way to add your pumpkin or to adhere your pumpkin to the vellum is to use your multi-purpose liquid glue. And really, we just need glue at the top because the other pumpkins will hold the bottom of the pumpkin in place. And this, you don't need a ton of glue. And this pumpkin is kind of fun because it already has little spots to put dots of glue. Okay, that's probably enough. And again, we're going to place it so that it's about 1/8 of an inch from the top and it's off to the right just slightly. Okay. All right. Then we'll add our stamped pumpkin, and we're going to do that using dimensionals. I think probably 3 dimensionals is probably fine. Well, yeah, 3 dimensionals probably will work. And we'll place this so on the left side here, we have an 1/8 of an inch showing, so same kind of amount as we have up here. And it's just going to overlap the cork just a little tiny bit. All right. And then we'll add our third pumpkin. Now what we're going to do is we're going to prop up the right side of the pumpkin so it's the same height as our stamped pumpkin, but we don't want to add dimensionals to this side because we want that to be even. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip this over. So this is the side that needs the dimensionals, so flip it over. And for this we're going to use our mini dimensionals. So I'm going to put one on the first section of the pumpkin, a second one on the next section, and then I'm going to come back with my liquid glue for the remaining 3 sections. And then we'll place this one so it's, again, about an 1/8 of an inch from this side. And this one's going to be just slightly lower on the cork than our stamped one. So they kind of look like they're staggered. Okay, there we go. Now we want to create our banner detail. And we'll do that by taking our piece of ribbon and we're going to fishtail the ends. Notice how this, that's what the fishtail is, mimics our punched banner. So what you'll do is you'll take your ribbon and you'll fold it in half, and then you will angle cut it from the end to the fold, like that. And that creates that fishtail. And we'll repeat it on the other side. Okay. All right, and then we'll take some Stampin' Seal and we'll run that down the center of our banner. Oops, got a little extra here, didn't I? There we go. And we'll place this over our ribbon so the notches on the ribbon line up with the notches on our banner. And we have about the same amount of ribbon sticking out on either side. Oops. Okay, there we go. And then we'll pop this up with our regular dimensionals. And I'm going to kind of stagger these a little bit so I bridge the very vanilla cardstock and the ribbon. So just make sure it holds in place a little bit. Okay. And then wherever you think it looks nice. And then our last thing is our genial gems. So here's what they look like. They come in 2 different colors, mint macaron and pale papaya. And in your kit, you might have gotten enough to put 2 large and 1 small, or 2 small and 1 large. So, and wherever you'd like them to go, wherever you think they look nice. Okay. And there's our last card. And now I'd like to show you a few more samples I made using the Pretty Pumpkins bundle. This first card is kind of fun because it actually uses the leftover pieces from when we cut the frame for our framed pumpkin card. To get the frame, what we did is we cut a piece of the cinnamon cider cardstock, and then we layered one of the dies from the Scallop Contours dies onto that, and then we layered the stitched rectangle die in as well. Now we could cut this all at one time, so it's very efficient. And these 2 sets of dies are designed to work together to create frames and that kind of thing. After we cut the frame, we had this centerpiece left over, so that's this piece here. And then we had the outside cardstock left over, so that's where that went. This next one features the pumpkin vines for this card. And again, here's our scalloped contour dies. And I put a couple of those vines on the inside of the card as well. Next card is a slightly different color scheme for fall. And I love, love, love this stitched greenery die. It just adds a really fun texture. It doesn't cut anything per se, but it puts the piercing to create the leaf shapes. So it's really fun. And there's our ribbon again and our cork. When I saw this paper in our Blackberry Beauty paper, it made me think of a spooky Halloween night. So I had to make a Halloween card with it. I used the Frightfully Cute bundle for this one. It has a set of dies and stamp set. And then the inside, I couldn't resist. I had to decorate that all up. Now, when I cut the designer series paper here, I actually cut a rectangle of this pattern and a rectangle of this pattern, layered them up and made a diagonal cut, which is kind of an efficient way to be able to create two of the same cards, just flip-flopping the designer series paper. And this next card takes that framed pumpkin card that we made, and I just thought it would be a really cute Halloween card as well. So the greeting here comes from that Frightfully Cute stamp set, and then the designer series paper here is something that you can earn for free when you host a Stampin' Up! Party, and it's called Pattern Party Designer Series paper. Get a ton of paper, super good value. And a little ribbon detail, switch the ribbons up here as well. So that's another Halloween card. And lastly, I have a couple samples featuring the designer series paper. They're more all occasion cards versus fall or Halloween. When I saw this particular pattern, I was just blown away, and I thought, you know, that can just stand by itself. Put a greeting on it, and you're good to go. It also made me think of our Faux Suede ribbon, which I think is just beautiful with this particular pattern. Now this 12 by 12 piece, you can cut it into 6 and make 6 cards just like this, or we get 2 sheets out of the pack, so you can make it 12 cards. And really, no matter which section of the designer series paper you get when you cut it, it's beautiful. And lastly, I thought this owl paper was so pretty, and I thought it'd be fun to change up the colors and pull out some of that pink that's in this pattern paper. And then here's our Frightfully Cute bundled dies as well, and then I fussy cut one of the owls to put on the inside of the card. So there you go. I hope these additional samples help inspire you to create even more beautiful cards using your Pretty Pumpkins bundle. Thanks again for participating in our Stampin' class by mail, and now here's Jeanna.
Thanks for demonstrating how to make those beautiful cards, Brenda. Make sure to follow the link in the email that shared this video with you to access the special Pinterest board that Brenda and I curated to show you even more ways to use your supplies. Next month, it's my turn to share the card designs with you, and I'm excited to show you a sneak peek of the 3 card designs. We'll be using the Whimsy and Wonder Suite by Stampin' Up! From the July to December 2021 mini catalog. 2 of our designs feature fun folds. From the suite, we'll be using the Whimsical Trees stamp set, Christmas Trees dies, Whimsy and Wonder Designer Series paper, Blushing Bride frayed grosgrain ribbon, and Wonderful Snowflakes. We'll also be using the Simply Elegant trim and silver foil sheets. To put your cards together, you'll need to supply the Whimsical Trees stamp set, Misty Moonlight ink pad, Mint Macaron ink pad, and Tuxedo Black Memento ink pad. Make sure you have the supply items to assemble your cards as shown. These include Stampin' Seal, Stampin' Dimensionals, Mini Stampin' Dimensionals, tear and tape adhesive, a bone folder, paper snips, and a variety of clear blocks. We'll also be using some punched and die cut items, but we'll include these with your kit. These elements will come from the Christmas Trees dies, Layering Circles dies, Scalloped Contours dies, Banners Pick-a-Punch, and Treasured Tags Pick-a-Punch. The registration deadline to guarantee your kit supplies is November 5th. We also have a bonus deadline of October 27th, 2021. If you sign up by that deadline, you'll receive 2 free completed cards with envelopes, along with your kit. We also have a referral bonus if you find new friends to take the Stampin' class by mail, so make sure to check your emails from either Brenda or me. If you're not already on one of our email lists, reach out to one of us and we'll get you added so you get all the fun information about Stampin' classes by mail, hosting events, or becoming a Stampin' Up demonstrator. Please let us know if you have any feedback on this class by mail, and as always, until next month, happy stamping.